Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salam ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Alhamdulillah hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fi kama yuhibbu rabbuna wa yarda. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. Amma ba'du. Alhamdulillah, thank you guys for joining me this afternoon for a continuation of our discussion on divorce. As I said before, for the duration of the month of October, as well as November, inshallah ta'ala, I will center most of my talks, my discussions around the topic of divorce. So someone asked me yesterday, why is it that brothers, it seems like it's easy for men to discard women? I think it's an excellent segue into my next discussion, which is exactly that. Why do men discard women? So I hope, the sisters are listening, but this conversation is primarily for the brothers. All right. Yesterday I had the conversation or the discussion with the sisters. Today I want to talk with the brothers. So when we talk about discarding someone, obviously divorce, but what does it mean to discard something? Discard something means to throw something away when you're done using it. All right? If we were to look at the meaning of the word to discard, it means to get rid of something or throw something away when you feel that it is no longer useful to you or no longer desirable, no longer something that you desire. You guys following me? And from a woman's perspective, a woman would feel that when she is being discarded or divorced without the man exerting enough energy or enough effort to try to make the relationship work, she feels betrayed, she feels abandoned, she feels, easily replaceable. All right. And some men make it known to the women when they get involved with them that they are easily replaceable. Like, don't get in here and act like I can't replace you. Some men make it a point to make that clear. And some women do the same thing, but I'm talking to the men today. And women feel betrayed because they invest a lot in a relationship, more so than what the man does. The man may provide, he may protect, and that is an investment. That's a significant investment. But men are not so inclined to invest emotionally as a woman is when it comes to her relationship. A woman has no other option but to invest emotionally in her relationships, because most of her relationships, whether friendships, whether business relationships, they're all connected some way, shape, form, or fashion to her emotion. Women talk to connect emotionally. Men, we don't talk to connect emotionally. We talk to solve problems. We talk to get stuff off our chests. Women talk or communicate to connect emotionally. It's very hard for a woman to separate her emotions from pretty much everything that she does. You follow me? This is why divorce is in the hands of men, and that there are very strict conditions upon a woman exiting the marriage. And although that might be a little different in today's time, because it seems like men are just as much emotional, if not more, than many women. Women have the roles have been reversed. So you'll find women being more logical, right? You'll find many women being more logical, operating, from a place of logic, operating from a place of rationale, and men being a little bit more, emotionally, perturbed or emotionally disturbed or emotionally compromised, which is why in the Muslim community, the divorce is usually initiated by the man. He's usually the one that wants out of the situation, whereas women are more inclined to stay, work it out, try to figure it out, right? And by being discarded, women feel like, it taps into their self-worth. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said that if you're going to draw benefit from a woman, you're going to draw benefit from her by leaving her in her natural state as a woman and everything that comes with. But if you go to try to straighten her, to make her more like a man, so it's easier for you to deal with, then you're going to break her. And this is where I want to talk about discarding, right? The Prophet ﷺ said the woman was created from a rib. إن المرأة خلقت من ضلع. The woman was created from a rib. وإن أعوج شيء في الضلع أعلاها. وإن أعوج شيء في الضلع أعلاها. The most curved part of the rib is the top part, meaning the woman's tongue. It's hard to straighten that tongue out, man. It's hard to get a woman not to use her tongue, because that's where a lot of her energy comes from. Most, if not all, of the divorces that have taken place in our communities is primarily because of the mouth of the woman, her mouth, her tongue, not being able to control her tongue. So the Prophet ﷺ said, وَإِنَّ أَعْوَجَ شَيْءٍ فِي الضِّلْعِ أَعْلَاهَا. The most curved part of the rib is the top part. He said, وَإِنْ ذَهَبْتَ تُقِيمَهَا كَسَرْتَهَا. If you go and try to straighten the rib, you're going to break it. If you go and you try to straighten the rib, you're going to break it. He said, "In istamta'ta biha istamta'ta biha wa biha iwaj." If you're going to draw benefit from the woman, you're going to draw benefit from her by leaving her as she is, in her natural state of femininity and all of what femininity entails. And the full scope of her femininity. If you're going to draw benefit from a woman, you're going to draw benefit from her by leaving her as she is. But if you try to straighten her, you're going to break her. And so sometimes men try to straighten women out by making them conform to their ideal woman, the woman that they have in their mind. All right. So a man has in his mind, some men live in a fantasy world. They create the image of the ideal woman for them in their minds. That's where it starts. It starts here. I want a woman who's going to be like this. And that woman is usually a puzzle that is pieced together by women he's come in contact with in his life, images of the ideal women, the woman that he's seen and been introduced to. Maybe he saw a homie of his and he likes the way that his wife treats him, or maybe his mom or his grandmom, or, what he's seen in movies. And it's just a combination of all of those things. Combination of all of those things, that he creates the ideal woman that only exists in his mind. He gets with a woman, and the woman that he's with is usually not the ideal woman for him. The woman that he gets with is usually not the ideal woman for him. Sometimes not even close. I don't know why men do this. The ideal woman that you have in your mind and the woman that you go after is like two worlds apart. At least if you go after a woman that is close to the ideal woman that you have in your mind, then there's not a lot of work that needs to be done. But if the ideal woman in your mind and the woman that you are pursuing are like two worlds apart, and some men just love projects. They take a woman and they make her a project. She's not the woman that I would usually go after. And sometimes we don't go after the ideal woman because we know that we can't deal with a woman like that, or we can't bag a woman like that. We know that. We know that. That's why the ideal woman only exists in our minds. Because we know, well, that woman right there is closer to the ideal woman that you have in your mind. Why don't you pursue her? Why are you going after this woman? She's nothing like the woman that you always talk about that you want to be with. And so we go after women that are far, far, far away from the ideal woman that we have in our minds. And part of the reason why is because we tell ourselves, well, I can get her to conform. I'm going to work with her. I'm going to mold her. Right? You ever find yourself saying that as a man? I'm going to mold her into being what I want her to be. Right? And so we want to impose on her to replicate for us in real time the image that we have in our mind. And here's where the discarding comes from. Because if she doesn't conform, right? If she doesn't conform because she's too complicated, then we let her go. We discard her. If she doesn't conform, we discard her because she's too complicated. If she does conform, we still discard her. Why? Why do we discard the woman when she finally conforms to the ideal version of a woman that we have in our minds? Why do we still discard her? The project is over? Not necessarily the project is over. Right? She was too easy to change. But because we were able to get her to, right, she's not authentic. Very good. Yvonne, very good. She's not authentic. He knows that she's conforming only because she doesn't want to lose him. Because she's not being her authentic self. She's not living up to her true potential, so we devalue her. And so instead of realizing that the ideal woman is what we wanted and not what we needed, when she finally becomes that ideal woman, we realize that's not really what I want. It's like a kid in a candy store. It's like you go into a store, you see something that you want, you buy it only to get it home and realize I don't really want it. You ever done that? You ever saw something in a store and you want it so bad? And you go and you collect money from here, you wait till you get paid, you make all these sacrifices only to finally get it and realize it's not really what you wanted. Some men do that to women. They go out of their way to go get this woman because in their mind, that's the woman that I want. Only to make all of these sacrifices, marry her, get her into the relationship, and then realize she's not what I need. And you discard her. So when the Prophet ﷺ said that if you're going to draw benefit from the woman, you will draw benefit from her by leaving her exactly how she is. Leave her as she is. In the full scope of her femininity. But if you go and you try to straighten her, you try to make her more than what she is, you take her outside of the realm of her authenticity, you're going to break her. You're going to discard her. It has everything to do with maturity that men, especially men that did not grow up with their fathers, they have a huge deficit because they don't have a balance. A father represents balance for a young man. And when you grow up without a father, you have an imbalance. Another reason why men discard women is because of the paradox of choice. The paradox of choice, or the illusion of options. Believing that you have options is an illusion. Why? It's called therapists, they call it the paradox of choice. Which means that people think when they have a lot of options or they have a lot of choices, that's actually a good thing. There's so many women out here in the world. You think you're the only woman? There's so many women out here. I can have any woman I want. Because while you have a plethora of choices, too many choices leads to what? When you have so many choices, what does that lead to? That leads to dissatisfaction with any choice that you make. It's like when you go into a store and there are so many options. You choose one option. You go into an ice cream store and they have 100 different flavors. You're afraid that you're going to pick the wrong flavor. So no matter what flavor you choose, you're always going to feel like there's another flavor that could have been better than it. That is what is called the paradox of choice. You think that having multiple options gives you power, but having multiple options actually steals your power because it makes you dissatisfied with whatever choice you make. Do you understand? The same applies to women. But I'm talking to the men here. It's called the paradox of choice. The more options that you have, the less satisfied you become with any option you make. Which means that you have less tolerance in a relationship because you believe you have so many options. It's one of the reasons why I don't like carrying a gun. And Delaware is an open carry state. Delaware is an open carry state. I could put a pistol on my hip and I could walk into any grocery store. I could walk in wherever I want. Delaware is an open carry state. Okay? All you need is a license. You need a license for a concealed carry. But it is your right as a U.S. citizen to bear arms. I personally do not walk around with a gun on my waist. Why? Number one, I'm good with my hands, so I'm not worried about that. But carrying a gun steals your choice to diffuse the situation. Because when you have a gun, you just automatically assume that that is your answer to any conflict. When you don't have a weapon on you, then you are forced to find a way to diffuse a situation before it escalates. It steals your ability to believe that you have another option. It makes you less tolerable. You understand? When you have a gun on your waist, it makes you less tolerable of conflict that you run into when you're out and about. Whereas when you don't have a gun, you'll let stuff slide, you'll let stuff go, you'll try to diffuse a situation. You will find other ways. You'll find another way to diffuse a situation and work the situation out. Same thing when you have a plethora of choices in a wife or in a woman. You believe that you have so many choices out here because there's so many women out here. You believe that you have so many choices that no matter what choice you make, you are intolerable. You're not going to tolerate what a normal person would tolerate in a relationship because you believe you have so many options. It's called the paradox of choice. So back in the day when people were accustomed to just getting in a relationship with someone and making it work no matter what, they didn't believe they had a bunch of options, even though they did. You understand? They were more prone to stay in a relationship and make it work because they didn't see a bunch of options. The only option was to make their marriage work. So they stayed longer. They tolerated more. They dealt with more. Whereas in today's time, man, you talk to brother, man, I ain't dealing with that. Man, I'm out. I ain't got time for that. I ain't dealing with that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody dealing with that. You're less tolerable because you believe you have so many options. That's one of the reasons why men can discard women so quickly. This is one of the reasons why men feel that it is so easy for them to discard the woman because they have so many options. But no matter what option you make, no matter what choice you make, you will always be intolerable and you will always be dissatisfied because you will always believe that someone else out there is better than what you've chosen. Someone else out there is better than the one that you've chosen. See, the difference between that and a man who opts for a second wife or third wife. Let's make sure that we draw the lines here very clearly. Because someone could say, okay, well, a man that goes after another wife, why isn't he satisfied with the first wife? Let's talk about that for a second. Someone could say a man going into polygyny, that is an indication that he is dissatisfied with what he has. No, a man that goes into polygyny, mark the operative phrase here is man. A man that goes into polygyny is not dissatisfied with what he has. He actually uses what he has to go after someone else that could possibly bring the same amount of benefit. He realizes that if this woman is this great to me, how much greater would I be if I had 2 of those women or 3 of those women who all equally brought some benefit into my life or into my family? You understand? A man going after another wife is not dissatisfied with what he has. And this is for women who think when their husband is looking for another wife that there's some type of deficiency in you. No, you should actually rejoice at the fact that he found something in you and he wants more of it. He's looking for another woman similar to you. Because he realizes that if I have become a better man with you by my side, what if I had 2 of you? What if I had 3 women like you? Absolutely. That's not a sign of dissatisfaction. That is actually a sign that he is satisfied. And here again, we're talking about a man. Because if a man is going after another wife, this is for the brothers. I want you to understand. Please, if you marry a woman and she's a good woman to you, then that means the second wife you marry or the third wife that you marry should be equally or even better than the woman that you already married. You can't be in polygyny and marry down. That's hustling backwards. For the brothers, I'm just telling you. You can't be in a relationship with a woman and this woman is a great woman and has brought out great things in you and then turn around and marry a second wife that's less than your first wife. How do you do that? Your first wife is the standard. That's the bar. I don't get brothers who have a great wife and you talk about how great this woman is and how great you have become as a man because of this woman, and then you marry down. You marry a woman that is the total antithesis to the woman that you married. I don't get it. Make it make sense for me. Make it make sense. How do you you're married to her and then you turn around and marry her? Like, I don't get it. Right, just like the salam, it should be equal or better. I mean, it's just some of the brothers out here, wallah al-azim, you need coaching. Some of the men, you guys, you need coaching. Don't look at that as a shot at your ego, because every basketball player, every football player, every tennis player, every golfer, every person has a trainer or a coach. A singer has a personal trainer. A swimmer has a personal trainer. You need coaching as a man. You out here moving in your 30s, in your 40s, and you moving like a 14, 15-year-old. Every professional sports player that we sing their praises and wear their jerseys with their names on it and get into arguments in the barbershop about, every one of them has a personal trainer, a coach. Every one of them has a coach. Every single sports player that we get into heated arguments about, they have coaches. They didn't just pop out of the womb great. They had people by their side that coached them, that trained them, that gave them advice. A coach's job is to point out to you what you're doing wrong so you can correct it. A coach's job is not to praise you when you're doing something right. The job of a coach is to point out what you are doing wrong so you can correct it. It's the same thing with having a Quran teacher. If you have a Quran teacher, when you are sitting with your teacher who is teaching you Quran, he is not praising for you for what, he doesn't open his mouth when you are doing something right. The only time your Quran teacher opens up their mouth is when you make a mistake. I'd say it again, go back. The only time your Quran teacher opens his mouth or her mouth is when you make a mistake. They're only there to help you correct the things about you that are wrong. That's it. Because the more you work on the things that you are wrong, by default, you are working on your perfection. Men who have huge egos only want their ego stroked as it relates to the things that they're doing right. They only want to be told and praised for the things that they are doing that are right. Never want to be told when they're wrong. Never want to be told when they are wrong. Because perfection and excellence, not perfection, excellence is not what you're striving for. This is why people outgrow other people. This is why people outgrow other people, because in your mind, you believe this little bit of success that you have is the pinnacle of success, while somebody else is looking at it like you have a glass ceiling over your head. Let me break that glass ceiling and show you that there's so much further you can get. Break this glass ceiling. And we're like, no, we're fighting because we enjoy the glass ceiling. It looks like we're aiming for the stars, but you're only going to a certain point, and that's it. You will not go any further. Why? Because you are afraid to address the things that you are doing wrong. Do you think that people who react that way were overly criticized as children? That might be possible. That might be possible. So they're what are called hypervigilant. It's a trauma response. It's a trauma response. You're hypervigilant, you're overprotective. It is a trauma response. And that could be due to being overly criticized as a child. But it also could be due to being overly praised as a child. Because when you're overly praised as a child, you only tend to focus on what you're good at. Because you've never heard anybody address and criticize you in the things that you're wrong. And the things that you're wrong at. You've never heard anybody do that. Grandma praises you, mom praises you, aunties praise you. You're surrounded by a bunch of women. And this is the difference between men and women. Men, we're not going to focus so much on the things that you're good at because we want you to be better. You ever look at where the coach is coming down on a star player and the star player takes issue with the coach, and why it's like, why are you coming down on me? I'm doing things right. I'm not here to point out the things that you're doing right. I'm here to point out the things that you're doing wrong. That is how you become excellent. You got your mother, you got your grandmother sitting in the stands. They praise you for the things that you're doing right. They praise you for doing what you're doing that's right. That's not my job. My job is to say you're dribbling too much. Pass the ball. You have other teams. You have other team players. You have other players on your team. You are not the star. Pass the ball. But what about when I just made that layup? I don't care about the layup. You got your mother and your grandmother in the stands to praise you for the layup you made. That's not my job. I'm not here to praise you for the things that you do that's right. I'm here to correct you about the things that you do that's wrong. Fathers are not there to placate the feelings of their sons. That's not our job. That's your mother's job. But what about the things I'm doing right? Your mother will praise you for the things that you're doing right. That's not my job. I'm not here to stroke your ego. You'll find tons of women in the world that will stroke your ego. Your father, I'm not that guy. Because I know that if I take my attention away from the things that you're doing wrong, I take my attention off of the constructive criticism and I focus only on praising you, I'm sending you the wrong message. Right, you want a cheerleader. Your dad is not your cheerleader. I'm not your cheerleader. Your dad knows how messed up the world is. Your dad knows that you are going to be somebody's father. You're going to be somebody's husband. I am not your cheerleader. And so a lot of men, they need coaching, man. Find someone, an older brother, someone that makes really good decisions, man, and latch on to that person. You don't need necessarily advice from the person, but what you want them to do is point out to me what I'm doing wrong, man. What am I doing wrong? If you look at me and you value our friendship and you see me as your brother, tell me what I'm doing wrong. What do you think that I need to improve in? That's how you become better as a man. Every star athlete out here has a coach, has somebody that is there that points out what they're doing wrong so that they can correct it. And that's one of the reasons why a man married to a woman who pulls his coat, draws his attention to the things he needs to improve in, he takes issue with it. You want her to praise you for what you're doing that's right. You don't want her to constructively criticize you for the things that you're doing that's wrong. So these are just some of the reasons that men discard women. And, you know, for the sisters, man, it's very important for you to understand the full psychology of men. You know, what I'm doing, what I'm attempting to do is let you in on men. And if you are a woman, and that's a great question, Sister Aisha, great question. If you're married to a man and it seems like he finds it difficult to accept constructive criticism, number one, you need to look at your criticism and ask yourself, is this constructive or is it deconstructive? Because sometimes women you approach in ways that, you know, it's messy. It's messy. And you ever heard the statement, even though you're right, you're still wrong? You're right. The way that what you are attempting to bring to his attention, you are right. But the way that you are approaching, you are wrong. The way that you are approaching, some of you just approach the situation in a very messy, irresponsible, and reckless way. This is your husband you're talking to. There should still be a baseline level of respect. Because if he improves and he gets better, it's better for everybody. Everybody wins. Everybody wins. That doesn't mean that you have to walk on eggshells every single time you need to bring something to his attention. But you got to check your tone, time, place, read the room. Right now might not be the time. You know, those are all things that have to be taken into consideration. You ever seen that clip of Iyanla Vanzant? I hope I'm saying that correctly. Where she's sitting with the young couple. There's a young African-American woman, young African-American guy, and the girl is like, yeah, because your sons are taking after you. And Iyanla's like, hold up, wait a minute. Sit over here for a second. Let me show you how you do this. She sat next to the man. She said, baby, listen, your kids love you. They respect you, and they want to be just like you. And they watch what you do, and they emulate your behaviors and emulate the things that you do. And if you do this and this and this, there's a strong possibility your children are going to do that. You see how receptive the man was? Do you see how receptive the man was when she showed her? Here again, women, they need coaching as well. What Iyanla was attempting to do is provide the woman with coaching. This is how you talk to a man. This is how you talk to a man. You gotta, every woman that has a husband at home, right, her tone was soothing. Even me, as I'm watching the clip, I'm like, man, you know, and alhamdulillah, my wives don't talk to me recklessly like that. Alhamdulillah, that's not my trial. That's not my test. But any man listening to that clip, you like, man, I would give you the world if you talk to me like that. I would carry the world on my shoulders for you if you talk to me like that. Any man would. And unfortunately, some women just, they weren't taught that. They weren't taught that. And so you have to unlearn a lot of the behaviors that you've learned, whether directly or indirectly in your life. You have to begin to make a conscious decision to say, I have to unlearn some of this stuff, man. And maybe tomorrow or maybe the day after, we'll talk about, when I go back to the women, we'll talk about this soft girl era, which is a farce. It's an illusion. I am so tired of hearing people say this. Oh, I'm in my soft girl era. Knock it off. Knock it off. Because femininity is not manufactured. Femininity is not manufactured. Please stop saying you in your soft girl era. What if I told you you never had to be in your soft girl era? If you had just embraced your femininity from the door, you wouldn't even have to. You know how silly it sounds? Just imagine a man saying, I'm in my masculine era. So then what the hell were you before you became masculine? What were you before you were masculine? Just imagine a man saying something like that. I'm in my masculine era. It's like, what? You in what? I hear this stuff, man, and I see this stuff, and I'm just like, my gosh, man. I'm in my soft girl era. So what were you in before you were in your soft girl era? You were in survival mode? When women say, well, I had to be the father and I had to be the wife. You'll never hear a man say that. Because no matter what's going on, even if he's a single father and taking care of his children, he's still never feminine. He's still the father. I had to be the mother and the father. You never hear a father saying, I had to be the father and the mother. You never hear a man say that, ever. If you are going to be a Muslim, if you have any intention on practicing Islam and being a Muslim, that means that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses us as men and as women, he speaks to the full scope of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. There is no in between. Look at the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses us as men, Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala nisa, men are the protectors and maintainers of the women. There is no in between. He's speaking directly to that masculine nature that he created us with. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and tell the women to lower their gaze and to guard their chastity, tell the women to draw their veils over their bodies, tell the women that they should be, they should not be too soft in their speech so that they attract the attention of someone in whose heart is a disease. You understand? You guys familiar with that ayah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the woman not to be too soft in her speech, so she attracts the attention of he who has a disease in his heart. Allah didn't say be in your soft girl era. He's speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that ayah is commanding Muslim women to be conscious of their femininity. The femininity is there. But sometimes your femininity could attract the attention of someone in whose hearts is a disease. When you say you in your soft girl era, that means that you have selective femininity. You have selective femininity. We'll talk about that tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. Because if you can be in your soft girl era and you can kind of just switch from being masculine to feminine or whatever, you have selective femininity. And that's dangerous. That is dangerous. When Allah told the women to not be so soft in their speech, meaning to be mindful of your femininity in front of those in whose hearts there is a disease. You have selective femininity. And here again, I don't want to make this about the women. We'll talk about that tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. But selective femininity, man, that's a real thing. That's a real thing, man. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to heal, help us to, begin to, being feminine is natural for us women. Not when it's selective, not when you can choose to be feminine or not. That's not natural. That's not natural. When you can choose to be feminine or not, that's not natural. A man never chooses to be masculine, depending on the circumstance and situation. We're always masculine. We don't turn that off. We don't choose to be masculine. That's just natural. But you operate in a space where you can choose to be feminine or not. That's dangerous. Who taught you that? In the words of Malcolm X, who taught you to hate yourself? Who taught you that? Allah musta'an. We'll talk about that tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa salama tasliman kathira wa subhanaka rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Abdul Malik, you on one, man. If he's rich, they'll be feminine. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Yeah, all that. That's a fact. That's a whole fact. Put a period after that. Absolutely. An entire sentence. We'll talk about that tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.